Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're embarking on a pretty crucial journey through your IGCSE business studies. We're launching into Unit 2, which is all about people in business, and specifically we're looking at Part 2, recruitment and training. Our main focus today, our deep dive, is Chapter 19, legal controls over employment. Now, I know it sounds maybe a bit heavy, legal controls, but it's a huge topic. And we're going to try and make it understandable and, well, hopefully even a bit fascinating for you.
That's exactly right. And when you think about governments and businesses interacting, this idea of legal controls, it might sound a bit dry initially, but just incredibly important. Governments all over the world step in with these kinds of laws for a really fundamental reason.
Yeah.
It's about protecting workers, making sure there are fair practices in the workplace. This isn't just like a random list of rules. It's about building a more equitable environment where businesses can actually thrive sustainably. And critically, without exploiting their employees, who are, let's face it, their most valuable asset.
Definitely. And Chapter 19, it covers a really broad spectrum, doesn't it? Things like preventing discrimination or, based on gender, race, disability, age, and ensuring safe working conditions, protection against unfair dismissal, loads of things. But for our focused deep dive today, we're going to zoom right in on one particularly impactful and, let's be honest, often debated area: minimum wage laws. We'll try and unpack why governments set them, what effects they have on businesses, the good and the bad, and maybe, surprisingly, how they can sometimes actually benefit businesses too. It's definitely got more layers than you might think at first glance. And just a reminder, as you explore these ideas with us, you can always dig deeper. You can find more resources, continue your learning on these topics. Just visit www.igcsc-business.weebly.com. It's a really fantastic resource for all your IGCSE business needs. Check it out. Okay, so let's unpack this first bit. Legal controls over employment. When we talk about these laws, what exactly we're covering under that big umbrella term? Are materials, they say governments often pass laws specifically to protect people when they're at work. So making sure businesses don't exploit workers, that they pay fair wages, maybe limit working hours so people aren't exhausted, and crucially, stopping discrimination and unfair dismissal. So it's really about setting a kind of baseline, isn't it? A baseline of fairness and safety.
It absolutely is. It's about setting that baseline. And what's really quite fascinating here, I think, is how this whole area represents a pretty significant societal shift. If you look back historically, it was much more, buyer beware for workers, you could say. Businesses held immense power. These laws, they mark a real transition. We've moved to a much more regulated environment, one that's designed, really, to create a more equitable workplace, where basic human rights and fair treatment aren't just, hoped for, they're legally guaranteed. And like you said, while our spotlight today is minimum wage, this bigger picture includes vital protections, like those against gender discrimination, race, disability, age discrimination. They're all part of the same push, the same effort to ensure dignity and fairness at work. Minimum wage is just a really, really prime example of government stepping in with very tangible effects on both employees and employers.
Right, I can definitely see that broader picture now. But okay, let's narrow our focus, like we said. Minimum wage. It sounds, so simple on the face of it, just a number, right? But I get the feeling there's a lot more going on than just a lowest pay rate. Is that right? What exactly is a minimum wage, technically?
You're spot on. Yeah. It's far more than just a number. I mean, in simple terms, yes, the minimum wage is the lowest amount per hour, the absolute floor.
Yeah.
That businesses are legally allowed to pay their workers. Yeah. You cannot go below it, period. But these laws, they're primarily designed to help specific groups, people who might be more vulnerable to really low pay. So we're talking low-income workers, low-skilled workers, apprentices perhaps, even young workers just starting out. It's meant to be a baseline for a basic standard of living, ensuring a certain level of income. And importantly, it's not just a guideline or a suggestion. Businesses that don't comply, that fail to pay the minimum wage, they face serious penalties, fines, sometimes even legal action. It has teeth.
Okay, so it has teeth. But if businesses have to pay more, their first thought might just be, okay, this means higher costs for me.
Right. So flipping it around from the government's perspective, what's the bigger picture here? Why bring in a law that, on the surface seems like it just adds a burden? What are the main reasons governments actually set these legal minimum wages?
That's a really good question. And it gets right to the heart of the policy's intention. Why do they do it? Our source material lays out three main reasons, and they all kind of stem from this desire to tackle broader societal issues. First, and probably the most direct reason, is to reduce poverty. That's the big one. The basic argument is that a minimum wage helps people earn enough for a basic standard of living, achieve a living wage, so they can afford essentials, food, housing, transport. The basics. By setting this income floor, The law aims to raise the standard of living for those in low-paid jobs, maybe even lift individuals and whole families out of poverty. And it can be really impactful. For instance, the source points to UK data from 2015. It showed that 15% of male full-time workers and a huge 41% of female full-time workers saw direct pay gains from minimum wage increases that year.
Wow, 41% for female full-time workers. That's massive.
It is massive, isn't it? Think about that. Nearly half of all female full-time workers in some sectors getting a direct pay rise because of this law. That makes a real difference to household budgets, to their ability to cope with just daily expenses.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's directly tackling that living wage gap for a big chunk of the workforce then.
Exactly. And that leads us straight into the second main reason. It's closely connected. It's part of a bigger goal of reducing inequality. Minimum wages are seen as, well, a pretty vital tool to help address those big gaps in wealth, to ensure a more even distribution of wealth in an economy. Look, in many societies, a large number of families in poverty rely on these low-paying jobs. It's just a fact. So by raising the floor for these wages, the government is essentially trying to make sure that the benefits of economic growth, they get shared more widely across all parts of society, not just concentrating at the very top. It's about trying to foster a more inclusive economy, you could say.
Okay, so poverty reduction, reducing inequality, those make a lot of intuitive sense from a sort of social policy angle. But then there's this third reason you hinted at earlier, the one about helping businesses. That still sounds really counterintuitive to me. How on earth does making businesses pay more actually end up helping them? Can you unpack that a bit?
Yeah, it's a fantastic point. And this is where the nuance really comes in. It's subtle but important. The third reason is indeed to help businesses, although maybe indirectly. Think of it like a strategic investment sometimes. See, when workers feel genuinely valued, when they feel fairly compensated, the shift isn't just about them being happier, though that helps. It taps into deeper psychological things like reciprocity, feeling you should give back, and commitment to the organization. And this isn't just, soft HR talk. It actually results in tangible benefits for the business. For instance, when workers feel their pay is fair, their morale often goes up significantly. And a happier, more motivated workforce, well, it's generally a more productive one. This often leads to dramatically lower staff turnover, fewer people quitting.
Ah, okay. Turnover costs.
Exactly. Think about the costs when someone leaves. You've got advertising the job, managers' time interviewing, then onboarding the new person, training them. And that temporary dip in productivity while the new person gets up to speed, these recruitment and training costs add up fast. Thousands per employee, easily. So, if a fair minimum wage helps keep staff longer, businesses save a lot of money there. Plus, staff who are more committed, more present, more motivated, they often have lower absence rates, too. They're more reliable. They show up. They're engaged. This stability means better quality work, maybe even more innovation from the team. So you get this kind of virtuous cycle, potentially, where the initial higher wage cost is often offset, maybe even more than offset, by these efficiency gains, cost savings elsewhere, and increased productivity. Think about, say, a small cafe. Staff might take more initiative, suggest new things, give better service, all because they feel secure and valued.
That makes a lot more sense when you put it like that. It's a much fuller picture. So it's not just about helping individuals out. It's this multi-pronged approach, aiming at poverty, aiming at inequality, and maybe even, in a roundabout way, strengthening businesses by creating a more motivated, stable workforce. The intentions behind these laws are clearly pretty broad then.
Yeah.
Now, you just touched on it, but let's really dig into the other side of the coin now. What are the direct effects of minimum wage laws on businesses? Because, while there are these benefits for workers and maybe the wider economy, businesses often feel that immediate hit of increased costs. That must present real challenges.
Oh, absolutely. You're right. There are definite potential challenges. Costs that businesses face, for sure. The most obvious one, the one everyone thinks of first, is higher wage costs. Simple as that. If a business was paying workers less than the new minimum, well, their payroll expenses are going to go up straight away. And for a small business, maybe one with really tight margins, that can be a serious concern. Now, this increased cost can make businesses react in a few different ways. They might look to replace labor with capital, technology. So a supermarket might invest more in those self-service checkouts, or a factory might automate part of its production line, reducing the need for human workers.
Right, automation.
Exactly. We also see sometimes the possibility of outsourcing production, moving jobs to countries where labor is cheaper. The source mentioned examples like fast food chains, maybe outsourcing their customer service call centers to places with lower wage costs. And then there's the big one, the argument that's always debated, that higher minimum wages could lead to job losses. This is a major concern for many economists, many business owners. However, and this is important, we need to look at the nuance that the source material gives us here. It's not always straightforward. Economists talk about the elasticity of labor demand, basically, how sensitive businesses are to wage changes. In some industries, maybe where labor costs are a massive chunk of total costs, or where profits are super thin, yeah, you might see more pressure to cut staff or automate faster. But, as our source points out, the evidence isn't always clear-cut. It gives that example. After minimum wage went up in the U.S. over 14 years, employment in that industry actually increased by over 700,000.
Increased, really?
Yeah, went up. Which suggests businesses often adapt in other ways, finding efficiencies, maybe improving service to justify prices, absorbing some costs, rather than just cutting jobs wholesale. It's a really complex economic picture.
So it's definitely not a simple wages go up, jobs automatically go down kind of equation. That's fascinating. But let's just recap, maybe expand a bit on those potential benefits for businesses that we talked about, especially thinking about how they might actually help offset these increased costs.
Absolutely. Because beyond that initial cost hike, the benefits can be pretty substantial if things play out right. Like we said, workers who are low paid, who now earn more, they often become significantly more motivated, more productive. Think about it. If you're not constantly stressed about making ends meet, you can probably focus better on your actual job. And this extra disposable income for low-wage earners, it also has a wider economic effect. It can lead to higher overall demand for goods and services right across the economy. If more people have a bit more money to spend, they buy more stuff, which can boost sales for all sorts of businesses in the longer run.
The knock-on effect.
Precisely, the knock-on effect. Then there are those internal benefits. Businesses might genuinely see lower staff absence rates, improved reliability because workers are more satisfied, maybe less stressed. Imagine, like a shop where the staff are always there, they're engaged, they give great service because they feel valued. That directly helps sales and keeps customers coming back. And as we really hammered home earlier, that reduced staff turnover, fewer people leaving. This isn't just a nice to have, it represents significant savings on recruitment, on training. Money saved there is money that can be used elsewhere. For a small manufacturer, say, keeping just a couple more employees each year could free up cash for new equipment or expansion. So, yes, the direct wage cost is immediate. But these longer-term benefits, motivation, productivity, lower turnover, even that wider economic boost, they can provide a really powerful counterbalance. It makes the minimum wage a very complex, but potentially a positive influence on a business's long-term health and efficiency. And this really brings up a crucial question, doesn't it? For businesses, for policymakers, everyone. How do you actually balance these things?
The increased direct costs versus the potential gains of motivation, productivity, the broader economic lift for more consumer spending. The real impact, well, it can be very complex. It depends on the industry, the local economy, how adaptable businesses are. Definitely a topic that's still widely debated in economic circles. No easy answers.
Definitely seems that way. We've covered a lot of ground there, really getting into the weeds of minimum wage. To help make sure all this sinks in, how about we put ourselves in the shoes of an IGCSE student, maybe facing an exam question. Let's try a couple of quick multiple choice questions straight from the chapter just to check our understanding. Ready to test yourselves out there? Okay, here's question 1. Which of the following is a possible benefit to a business of the introduction of a minimum wage? Is it A, a business will be able to employ more women, B, there will be less administration when taking on an employee, C, worker motivation might improve since workers will be better paid, or D, business taxes will be lower? What do you think?
Okay, thinking back to what we discussed, the answer there has to be C. Worker motivation might improve since workers will be better paid. That ties directly back to our conversation about morale, productivity, engagement. How feeling valued through fair pay can actually lead to positive outcomes for the business itself, potentially offsetting costs.
Spot on. Great job. Let's try one more. Equally important, this one gets at the reasons behind the law. Question 3. Which of the following is a motive for the introduction of a minimum wage? Is the motive A, reduce poverty, B, encourage the employment of more female workers, C, encourage the employment of more workers from ethnic minorities, or D, improve the productivity of workers? Which one is the core motivation?
Right, the motive. Looking at those options, the primary motive we identified from the government's perspective is A, reduce poverty. While, yes, productivity might improve as an effect, and that benefits businesses, the fundamental reason governments bring these laws in, the core driver, is usually about ensuring that basic living wage and helping lift people out of poverty. It's primarily a social welfare policy focused on economic equity.
Perfect. And just like that, we've navigated through a pretty detailed deep dive on minimum wage laws. We've looked at why governments put them in place, those big goals like reducing poverty and inequality. We also explored those, perhaps surprising, ways they can indirectly help businesses better morale, less turnover, more productivity. And of course, we acknowledged the other side, the impacts on businesses, both the immediate cost challenges and those potential longer-term benefits like lower turnover and maybe even a boost in overall consumer demand. It's definitely a complex mix of social goals and economic realities.
It really is.
Yeah.
And maybe it leaves us and you listening with a final thought to mull over, a provocative one perhaps. It's this question that societies and businesses are grappling with all the time. How do we genuinely balance that desire for economic efficiency and competitiveness, making sure businesses can thrive, create jobs, with the absolute imperative of social equity, ensuring a decent, dignified living wage for everyone? There are no easy answers, as we said. It's an ongoing debate, and understanding both sides of that argument is so crucial for anyone thinking about going into business or just being an informed citizen, really.
Absolutely. A really vital question to keep pondering as you continue with your IGCSE business studies and probably long after that, too. Thank you so much for joining us on the deep dive today. We really hope you feel a bit more confident now about this key aspect of legal controls over employment. Keep exploring. And don't forget, for more resources, more detailed information, including on all the other legal controls we touched on, you can always head over to www.igcse-business.weebly.com. We'll see you on the next deep dive.